I trusted my husband completely and believed every word he said for 12 years of marriage. This morning, he kissed my forehead, grabbed his suitcase, and told me he was leaving for a business trip to Chicago. I waved goodbye from the kitchen window and watched him drive away. 1 hour later, my doorbell rang and nobody was there. Just his suitcase sitting on my porch with a message written in blood-red lipstick. Ask him what he did last night. My hands shook as I opened that suitcase and found proof that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. Before I tell you what I discovered, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And please subscribe so my story reaches more people who need to hear it. He kissed my forehead this morning like he always did before his business trips and grabbed his coffee mug from the counter and rolled his black suitcase toward the front door. He told me Chicago conference, and he would be back Thursday while checking his phone for the third time in 5 minutes. I was standing at the kitchen window in my bathrobe, watching him, and something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was. He loaded the suitcase into his trunk and waved at me through the windshield, and I waved back with this uneasy feeling sitting heavy in my stomach. I watched him drive away, down our quiet suburban street until his car disappeared around the corner and the feeling didn't go away. Something was off about the way he wouldn't meet my eyes when he kissed me goodbye. Something was off about the way his hands shook slightly when he zipped up that suitcase in our bedroom. Something was off about how many times he checked his phone while getting ready to leave. But I pushed it down like I always did and told myself I was being paranoid and ridiculous because he traveled for work all the time, and this was no different than any other business trip. I went back to the counter and picked up my coffee that was getting cold and tried to shake off the weird feeling. We had been married for 12 years and he went on business trips at least once a month, and I never felt like this before. Maybe I was just tired or stressed about my own work deadlines. Maybe I was overthinking things because we had a small argument last week about him being on his phone too much. I convinced myself there was nothing wrong and I needed to stop looking for problems that didn't exist. I was still in my bathrobe, standing at the counter with my coffee getting cold when the doorbell rang exactly 1 hour after he left. I looked at the clock on the microwave and saw it was 7:30, which meant he should be at the airport by now, going through security for his 9:15 flight. I thought maybe he forgot something important, like his laptop charger or his presentation notes and had to come back to get it. I walked to the front door expecting to see him standing there, looking annoyed at himself for forgetting whatever he needed. But when I opened the door, nobody was there. I stepped out onto the porch in my bare feet and looked left and right down the street, but I didn't see anyone. No car pulling away, no person walking off, no delivery truck driving away. Just empty sidewalks and quiet houses on a normal Tuesday morning. My neighbor was getting her newspaper from the driveway, and she waved at me, and I waved back automatically, even though my heart was starting to beat faster, because something was very wrong. Then I looked down at the welcome mat, and my heart just stopped completely. His suitcase was sitting there, the same black suitcase I watched him load into his trunk and drive away with 60 minutes ago. I stood there staring at it, trying to make my brain understand what I was seeing, because it made no sense at all. How could his suitcase be here on my porch when he was supposed to be at the airport right now? My hands started shaking and my breathing got loud in my ears, and I felt like I might throw up right there on the porch. I looked around again, searching for any sign of who brought it here, but there was nothing. Whoever rang the doorbell and left this suitcase was already gone. They planned it perfectly, waiting until exactly the right moment to make sure I would be home alone and confused and scared. My whole body started trembling as I realized this wasn't an accident or a mistake. Someone did this on purpose, and they wanted me to find something. That's when I saw it smeared across the top of his black suitcase in what looked like bright red lipstick. The message said, "Ask him what he did last night." And the letters were shaky and urgent, like whoever wrote them had been rushing or scared or furious, or maybe all three at once. The lipstick was so bright it almost looked like blood in the morning sunlight, and my stomach turned over looking at it. I bent down and touched one of the letters, and the lipstick smudged on my finger, confirming it was real and not something I was imagining. I stood up fast and looked up and down the street again, but I still saw nothing. No car speeding away, no figure watching from the shadows or hiding behind trees, just our peaceful neighborhood on a regular morning. But someone had been here just minutes ago, close enough to ring my doorbell and leave this suitcase with this message. Someone who knew where I lived and knew my husband and knew something I didn't know. The thought made my skin crawl because whoever wrote this message had been standing exactly where I was standing right now. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the suitcase handle, but I dragged it inside and slammed the door behind me and locked it. I stood in the entryway, just staring at those red words, trying to process what was happening. Ask him what he did last night. What did that mean? What did he do last night? Last night, he was home with me. We had dinner together. We watched television. He said he was tired and went to bed early because of his early flight this morning. That was what happened last night, or at least that was what I thought happened. But someone knew something different, and that someone wanted me to know the truth badly enough to bring his suitcase back to my house and write this message. I felt dizzy and sick, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. This wasn't just some random prank or mistake. This was deliberate and personal and cruel. Someone wanted to destroy whatever I thought I knew about my husband and my marriage, and they were using this suitcase and this message to do it. I unzipped that suitcase right there in my entryway, with my whole body trembling and my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the zipper. The sound of it opening was loud in the quiet house, and I held my breath as I pulled back the top and looked inside. His clothes were packed exactly like he left them, with his dress shirts folded perfectly, and his ties rolled up neatly, and his toiletry bag tucked into the corner. For a second, I thought maybe this was all some weird misunderstanding and there was nothing to find. But then I saw the hotel key card sitting right on top of everything, and my stomach dropped to the floor. I picked it up with shaking fingers and looked at it closely. It was from the Riverside Inn, which was a hotel about 20 minutes from our house. Not anywhere near the airport, and definitely not in Chicago, where he said he was going. The key card had room 214 written on it, and I just stared at it, trying to understand why my husband would have a hotel key from a local hotel when he was supposed to be flying across the country for a business conference. I set the key card aside and kept digging through the suitcase looking for more. Underneath his shirts, I found a receipt, and when I unfolded it and read the details, I thought I was going to be sick. It was from the Riverside Inn, dated last night at 11:47 p.m., and it showed room service for 2 people. Champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries, 2 dinner entrees, room service for 2 at almost midnight at a hotel 20 minutes from our house, while I was home alone in our bed thinking he was upstairs in his office working. My mind flashed back to last night, and I remembered it so clearly now. He came home from work around 6 and said he had a headache and needed to rest before packing. I made dinner and ate alone because he said he wasn't hungry. Around 10, I went upstairs to say goodnight, and he was in his office with the door closed, and he said he was finishing work emails before his trip. I went to bed alone and fell asleep, and when I woke up this morning, he was already awake and dressed and packing his suitcase like everything was normal. But nothing was normal, because he wasn't in his office working last night. He left our house and went to the Riverside Inn and spent the night with someone else. He ordered champagne and strawberries at midnight while I slept, alone in our bed, believing his lies. Then he came home early in the morning and got ready and kissed my forehead and left for his fake business trip like nothing happened. The cruelty of it made me want to scream. I kept searching through the suitcase because I needed to see everything, and I needed to know exactly how bad this was. That's when I found it tucked into the side pocket, like he tried to hide it but didn't hide it well enough. A woman's red lace bra that definitely was not mine, because I didn't own anything like that. It was small and expensive looking, and it smelled like perfume I didn't recognize. I held it in my hands and just stared at it, and something inside me broke completely into pieces. I sat on the floor surrounded by all the evidence, with the hotel key card and the receipt and the bra spread out around me, and I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I needed to call him right now and hear what he would say when I confronted him with the truth. Part of me was hoping there was some explanation that would make sense, but I knew deep down there was no good explanation for any of this. I dialed his number, and my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, and I felt like I might pass out. He answered on the first ring, and his voice was casual and bright, like he didn't have a care in the world. "Hey, babe," he said in that cheerful tone he used when everything was normal, and I could hear airport announcements in the background. He said he just got through security and his flight was boarding in 30 minutes, and he would text me when he landed in Chicago. I could picture him standing there at the gate with his coffee, thinking he got away with everything, thinking I was home, believing his lies like I always did. I made my voice deadly calm, even though I was shaking, and I said, "Funny thing, your suitcase just showed up on our porch, and I want to know how that's possible when you're at the airport right now." The silence on the other end was so thick and heavy, I could feel it crushing my chest. I heard him breathing, but he didn't say anything for what felt like forever. The airport announcements kept playing in the background, but he was completely silent, and I knew in that moment that everything I found was real and he was caught. Finally, he started stammering and talking fast, and his voice changed completely from casual to panicked. He said someone must have stolen his suitcase, and this was crazy, and maybe it was a prank, and he had no idea what was happening. His words were running together, and he was trying so hard to sound confused, but I could hear the fear in his voice. I asked him very calmly if he was at the airport right now, with no luggage, and how exactly he planned to go on a business trip without any of his things. More silence, and I could hear him struggling to come up with an answer that made sense. Then he said, "I can explain everything and just don't do anything crazy, and I'm coming home right now." That's when I knew for absolute certain. Every word out of his mouth for God knows how long had been a complete lie. Every business trip, every late night at the office, every time he kissed my forehead and promised he'd be home soon, all of it was lies stacked on top of more lies. I wasn't done yet because I needed to hear him try to explain last night. I asked him what he did last night, and my voice was shaking now because I was so angry I could barely speak. He asked me what I meant, and I said someone left a message on your suitcase telling me to ask you what you did last night, so I'm asking. He started saying he was home last night, and I knew that, and we had dinner and watched TV, and he didn't do anything. I interrupted him and told him that was interesting, because I was holding a receipt from the Riverside Inn showing room service for 2 at 11:47 p.m. last night. The silence that followed was different this time. It was the silence of someone who just got caught in a lie so big there was no way out. I heard him take a shaky breath, and then he said my name in this pleading, desperate voice like he was about to beg. I told him not to bother coming home because I was changing the locks and calling a lawyer, and he needed to figure out where he was going to live because it wasn't going to be in my house anymore. He started talking fast and saying, "Wait, and please, and let me explain," and his voice was getting higher and more desperate with every word. He said it wasn't what I thought, and he could explain everything if I just gave him a chance. I asked him again very slowly if he was at the airport right now with no luggage, and he went quiet for a few seconds. Then he admitted in this small voice that he wasn't actually at the airport. He was at a coffee shop near the airport, and he had been planning to turn around anyway because he felt guilty. I almost laughed at that because he felt guilty, not sorry for what he did, but guilty that he might get caught. I asked him where his suitcase was, since it was currently sitting in my entryway, and he stammered and said he must have left it somewhere, and someone must have taken it. I told him to stop lying because I was holding a hotel key card and a receipt and another woman's bra, and I knew exactly where he was last night. He went completely silent, and I could hear him breathing hard like he was panicking or maybe crying. Then the lies started pouring out faster and more desperate. He said it was just one time and it didn't mean anything, and he made a terrible mistake. He said he met someone at a work event a few weeks ago, and she came on to him, and he was weak and stupid, and it would never happen again. I asked him if he really expected me to believe it was just one time when he had a hotel key card and seemed very comfortable ordering room service at midnight. He started crying then, actual crying, and saying he was sorry and he loved me and he would do anything to fix this. I told him I didn't believe a single word coming out of his mouth, because every word he said for months or maybe years had been a lie. Every business trip where he said he would miss me, every time he came home late and said he was working, every morning he kissed me goodbye and acted like everything was fine. All of it was lies, and I was done believing anything he said. He kept saying please, and I'm sorry, and it was a mistake. But I wasn't listening anymore. I asked him one more question, and my voice was cold and flat. I asked him if he was really going to Chicago at all, or if that was another lie. He went quiet again, and then admitted in this broken voice that he wasn't going to Chicago. He was going to spend a few days with her at a resort upstate, and he was going to tell me it was a work conference. So even this morning, when he kissed me goodbye and rolled his suitcase out the door, even that was part of his plan, to spend days with another woman while I sat at home alone waiting for him to come back. The cruelty of it took my breath away. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was planned and deliberate, and he was going to look me in the eye and lie about where he was going while he went off to play house with someone else. I told him we were done, and I was hanging up now, and he started yelling and begging me not to hang up. But I ended the call anyway, and blocked his number, and sat there on the floor feeling like my whole life just exploded into pieces. I sat there staring at that red lipstick message smeared across his suitcase, and the reality of what happened started sinking in deeper and darker. Someone had driven to my house this morning, walked up to my front door, rang my doorbell, and left this suitcase with evidence meant to destroy my husband's lies. This wasn't just some random person who accidentally found his suitcase. This was someone who knew exactly where I lived and what time my husband left, and what he told me about his trip. She had been planning this, and she wanted me to know the truth. She knew my address, which meant either he told her where we lived or she followed him home at some point. The thought of her driving past my house or sitting in her car watching me through the windows made me feel sick and violated. She knew my schedule well enough to know I would be home alone this morning after he left. She knew he told me he was going on a business trip because she returned his suitcase to make sure I knew he was lying. This woman had access to details about my life and my marriage that she had no right to have. The lipstick message wasn't just about exposing him. It was personal and angry and desperate. Ask him what he did last night. She wanted me to know about last night specifically, which meant last night was important somehow. Maybe last night was supposed to be the night he finally told me about her and chose her and left me. Maybe she begged him to end our marriage and he refused, and that's why she snapped. Maybe she was tired of being the secret and decided if he wasn't going to tell me the truth, then she would tell me herself. I thought about how she got his suitcase and tried to piece together what must have happened. He probably left it at the hotel this morning when he snuck out early to come home and pretend he was leaving for his business trip. Maybe she was still there in the room when he left, and she was so furious she grabbed his suitcase and followed him. Or maybe he left it in his car and she took it while he was inside our house, kissing me goodbye and lying to my face. Either way, she had access to his things and his schedule and his lies, and she used all of it against him. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was someone who was done being hidden and done waiting for him to choose her. She wanted to blow up his perfect lie of a life, and she handed me the bomb to do it. The hotel key card, the receipt, the bra, the message, all of it was her confession and her revenge wrapped up together. She knew I would find everything and call him and destroy his lies before he even got on whatever fake trip he was planning. She forced the truth out into the open because he was never going to tell me himself. Part of me hated her for sleeping with my husband and knowing about me and coming to my house and invading my life. But another part of me understood her rage because she was being lied to, just like I was being lied to. He promised her things he had no intention of delivering, and when she finally demanded the truth, he chose to keep lying to both of us. So she decided to burn it all down, and she used me to do it, and in a sick, twisted way, she gave me the proof I needed to finally see who my husband really was. While I was sitting there waiting for him to come home, I decided I needed to know everything, and I wasn't going to wait for him to tell me more lies. I got up off the floor and walked to his office down the hall and sat down at his desk and opened his laptop. The screen lit up asking for a password, and I typed in our anniversary date because that was the password he used for everything. The laptop unlocked, and the irony of using our anniversary to hide his affair made me so angry I wanted to throw the computer across the room. I opened his photos first and started scrolling through looking for anything suspicious. Most of it was normal stuff. Pictures from vacations and family events and random screenshots. But then I found a folder buried inside another folder, labeled Work Presentations, which seemed like a strange place to hide work files. I clicked on it, and my stomach twisted into knots. The folder was full of photos of them together. Hundreds of photos going back 8 months based on the dates. They were at restaurants and hotels and parks and beaches, and in some of them, they were kissing or holding hands or looking at each other like they were in love. I scrolled through the photos, feeling sicker with every single one. There were photos from 8 months ago, which meant this affair had been going on for at least that long and probably longer. In one photo, they were at a beach somewhere tropical, and she was wearing a bikini, and he had his arm around her waist, and they both looked so happy. I remembered that weekend because he told me he was going to a conference in Miami, and I stayed home alone. He wasn't at a conference. He was at the beach with her, living a completely separate life I knew nothing about. I closed the photos because I couldn't look at them anymore, and I opened his messages and found a thread with a contact saved as J. Miller, which was obviously a fake name to hide who she really was. The messages went back almost a year, and they called each other baby and sweetheart and made plans to meet at different hotels. He told her he loved her and missed her and couldn't wait to see her again. He promised her over and over that he would figure things out soon, and they could be together properly without sneaking around. She asked him repeatedly when he was going to tell me about them and leave me, and he always said soon, just give me a little more time. I need to find the right moment. But there was never a right moment because he had no intention of actually leaving me. He wanted to keep both of us, his wife at home and his mistress on the side. And he thought he could manage it forever by just lying to both of us. The messages from last night made everything crystal clear and showed me exactly why she snapped and brought his suitcase to my house. She sent him a long message around 9 p.m. saying she was done being a secret and done waiting for him to keep his promises. She said she loved him, but she couldn't do this anymore unless he was willing to actually leave his wife and start a real life with her. She said if he didn't tell me this week, then she would tell me herself because she deserved better than sneaking around and hiding. He responded about an hour later saying he understood and he would talk to me very soon and everything would work out the way they wanted. But that was just another lie to keep her quiet because this morning he kissed me goodbye and left for his fake business trip without saying one word about her or leaving me. He had absolutely no intention of telling me anything. He was just buying more time and hoping she would calm down and keep being patient and keep being his secret. But she didn't calm down, and she didn't stay patient, and she grabbed his suitcase and drove to my house and forced the truth out into the open where he couldn't hide it anymore. I heard his car pull into the driveway about 40 minutes after I hung up on him, and I walked to the front window and watched him get out. He looked terrible. His face was pale and his eyes were red, like he had been crying, and he kept running his hands through his hair the way he did when he was stressed or scared. He didn't have his suitcase with him because, of course, he didn't. It was sitting in my entryway, surrounded by all the evidence of his lies. He walked toward the house slowly, like he was afraid of what he would find inside, and I felt absolutely nothing watching him. I had spent the last 40 minutes printing out screenshots from his laptop. All the photos of them together and pages of their messages where he told her he loved her and promised to leave me. I spread everything out on the porch next to the hotel key card and the receipt in the red lace bra so he would see it all laid out in the open where he couldn't deny it or lie about it anymore. I wanted him to see exactly what I found and know that I knew everything. I opened the front door before he could knock, and I stood there blocking the entrance with my arms crossed. He looked at me and then looked down at everything spread across the porch and all the color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out at first. He just stood there, staring at the evidence like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Finally, He managed to say, "Let me explain," in this weak, pathetic voice that made me hate him even more than I already did. I held up my hand and told him to stop talking because I didn't want to hear any more lies come out of his mouth. I told him the woman who left his suitcase on our porch already explained everything, and I knew about the 8 months of affair and the Riverside Inn and all those business trips that never actually needed a suitcase because he wasn't going anywhere except to hotel rooms with her. His face crumbled and he took a step toward me, with his hands reaching out like he wanted to touch me or hug me, but I stepped back and told him not to come any closer. He started crying then, with actual tears running down his face, and he said it was a mistake, and he was so sorry and he never meant to hurt me, and it didn't mean anything. I stared at him and asked him how 8 months of lying and sneaking around and telling another woman he loved her didn't mean anything. I asked him which part didn't mean anything. The hundreds of photos I found on his laptop, or the messages where he promised to leave me, or the hotel room last night where he ordered champagne and strawberries for 2. His face went even paler, and he realized I had been through his laptop and seen everything. He kept saying, "I'm sorry," over and over, like those 2 words could somehow fix what he destroyed. He said he loved me, and he wanted to make this work, and he would end things with her immediately, and we could go to counseling and save our marriage. I almost laughed at that because he actually thought I would want to save a marriage built entirely on lies and betrayal and disrespect. I handed him the suitcase his mistress had returned, the one with her lipstick confession still smeared across the top in blood-red letters that wouldn't wipe off. I told him to pack whatever he needed right now because he had 10 minutes before I called the police and had him removed from my property. He looked at the suitcase and then at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized I was completely serious, and there was no talking his way out of this. He asked me where he was supposed to go, and I told him that wasn't my problem anymore. Maybe he could go stay with the woman he spent 8 months lying for. He went inside, and I followed him to make sure he only took his personal belongings and didn't try to grab anything valuable or important. He moved through the house like a ghost, picking up clothes and toiletries and throwing them into the suitcase without really looking at anything. He kept glancing at me like he was hoping I would change my mind and tell him to stay, but I just stood there with my arms crossed, waiting for him to finish and leave. I felt nothing watching him pack up his life. No sadness or regret or even anger anymore. Just relief that the lies were finally over. He finished packing and walked past me, toward the front door carrying the suitcase, and he stopped and tried one more time. He said he loved me, and he made a terrible mistake, and he would spend the rest of his life making it up to me if I just gave him another chance. I told him the only mistake he made was getting caught, because if his mistress hadn't returned his suitcase with that message, he would be with her right now on a fake trip, while I sat at home believing his lies. I said he didn't love me. He loved having a wife who trusted him and believed everything he said while he lived a secret life with someone else. He started crying again, but I felt nothing watching his tears because I knew they were for himself and not for me or for what he destroyed. I opened the front door and told him to get out and not come back. He walked to his car with his suitcase and put it in the trunk and stood there for a minute, looking back at the house, like he was thinking about trying again. I slammed the door and locked it and watched through the window as he finally got in his car and drove away down the street. As soon as he turned the corner, I called a locksmith and scheduled them to come change all the locks that same afternoon. Then I called my sister and told her everything that happened, and she said she was coming over immediately and I shouldn't be alone. Then I called a divorce lawyer and left a message explaining the situation and asking for an appointment as soon as possible. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts from him, but I blocked his number and deleted every message without reading them. My sister arrived an hour later and hugged me while I finally let myself cry for the first time since finding the suitcase. She helped me gather up all the evidence and put it in a folder for my lawyer. The locksmith came and changed all the locks and gave me new keys, and I felt safer knowing he couldn't just walk back into my house whenever he wanted. Over the next few days, my husband tried everything to contact me, calling from different numbers, showing up at my work, sending emails and messages through friends, but I ignored all of it. His mistress never contacted me directly, but I knew she was the one who gave me the truth when my husband refused to. She was tired of being a secret and tired of his promises, and when he chose to keep lying to both of us, she decided to burn down his perfect lie of a life. She handed me proof I couldn't ignore, and in a twisted way, she set me free from a marriage built entirely on deception and disrespect. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, and he tried to fight me on everything. But I had all the evidence, and the judge wasn't sympathetic to a man who spent a year cheating on his wife. I kept the house and most of our assets, and he moved away with nothing. He said he was going on a business trip, but an hour later, his suitcase appeared on my porch with a blood-red message asking what he did last night. His mistress was done being a secret, and her confession set me free from a marriage built entirely on lies, and I never looked back.